Hello, my fellow designers. Welcome back to D-Life HD. This is Victor, and you're going to need to get out your tinfoil hats and start collecting those large grains of salt, because we are going to jump into Nintendo Switch Pro rumors. Of course, everything stated in this video is only speculation, nothing is set in stone, so without any further delay, let's jump right into it.
I was a worker, had to upgrade to a boss. Used to live in the hood, but had to upgrade to a loft.
Different websites have confirmed Nintendo Switch Pro for years, saying, oh, we have insight into these specific things and we know for sure that a Switch Pro is coming. Some people have tried to predict dates, others have tried to predict stats and different upgrades that the Switch Pro would give us, but ultimately we have not received any confirmation of a Nintendo Switch Pro from Nintendo themselves. On top of that, people have tried confirming specific things about it that contradict each other. So it's just a big headache and we don't know who to believe, and to be honest, I think it is best to just hold out until some actual real announcement is made and not get your hopes up. A Switch Pro seems inevitable and very likely to happen, especially considering the Nintendo 3DS and how it had a mid-life cycle little downgrade, or like a cheaper entry, and that was the 2DS, which is similar to the Nintendo Switch Lite that we already got. And then later we received the 3DS XL, the new Nintendo 3DS, and it served as a more pro model that had a little bit more power and kick to it, and a special 3D tracking function. Needless to say, it just had some upgraded features that were not included in the original model. And so Nintendo so far has followed that same trend, putting out the original version of the console, then a cheaper entry with a few functions taken away, like the ability to switch it. And on the 2DS, of course, you had the main function being the 3D was taken away for cost-saving measures and to be aimed more towards kids, which is similar to what the Switch Lite is. In addition, they also used the 2DS as a model that would be easier for people within one household with multiple people, for everybody to be able to have a 3DS, which is very similar to the Switch Lite, which is at a cheaper price, so you can have multiple kids having multiple Switches rather than everybody using just one console, which Nintendo has come out and said that is exactly what they want. They want everybody in the household to have their own console. And so they're following a very similar thing that they did, like the same exact plan basically, so a Nintendo Switch Pro seems like it would come. And to be honest, I do think a Switch Pro is on the rise, but I think they might have run into issues with manufacturing considering the worldwide pandemic, and I think that it's been delayed and pushed off for a while. A lot of people have speculated, with Monster Hunter Rise coming out being a little bit more intensive in its graphical style, perhaps it is being optimized for a Nintendo Switch Pro console, something that might give us more frames and higher resolution. But other people are claiming that they want to launch the Switch Pro alongside a bigger title, that being Breath of the Wild 2. Another interesting concept is the fact that Hyrule Warriors dropped on the original base model 3DS, and it was a little bit choppy and ran into a lot of issues because the base model 3DS was not extremely powerful and was not really able to handle Hyrule Warriors running on it, until they released the new Nintendo 3DS, which had an optimized version of that Hyrule Warriors game, which allowed the frames to stay pretty stable and the draw distance for enemies to be a lot better, and it was just overall a fantastic experience compared to that base model version. And if you've thought about it, Hyrule Warriors game, Age of Calamity, that we just got last year, ran into some similar issues on the base model Switch, that being framing issues and some graphical hiccups here and there, so perhaps we might run into the same experience. being able to play Hyrule Warriors on the base model console, but having the best experience on the Pro model. Now, what the Pro model actually will include, of course, it is completely up to speculation at this point. Like I mentioned earlier, the new Nintendo 3DS added a bunch of new functions, including a C-stick and face tracking technology, so it was more additional functions on top of just having more processing power. I think the main inclusion on the Nintendo Switch Pro would most likely be a higher resolution screen for the tablet function, even though the 720p screen is pretty crisp on its own, and more power, more RAM in order to push higher frames. Because honestly, the Nintendo Switch is a decently powerful console, it just doesn't have that much memory, so it struggles to run things at a higher frame rate. And if we got more memory with a newer NVIDIA chip, which to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the NVIDIA chip used in the Nintendo Switch right now, perhaps we could push higher frames on those games that I like on the Nintendo Switch, things like Doom and the Outer Worlds and The Witcher, more demanding games that we've seen ported to the Nintendo Switch that are pretty much locked in 30 frames or below sometimes. Actual, physical functions on the Nintendo Switch, I'm a little bit speculative here because some people have said 4K on the tablet, which is utterly ridiculous. I mean, 4K on a tablet, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference because the pixels are so close together. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. Honestly, I think they can get away with just the 720p screen. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting, because the Nintendo Switch dock could act as a booster. We've seen external GPUs for things like laptops, which are functions that work via this main USB or even USB-C type, which allow laptops that don't have a graphics processing unit to have extra kick when it comes to that by just plugging it into the computer itself. At this point, I think that the handheld experience, other than a few things like the Joy-Con drifting situation, I think it's pretty solid. With the 720p screen, everything looks really crisp and flush together. I don't think there's a need to go any higher, maybe 1080, but again, the difference between 720 and 1080 on such a small screen is not really as noticeable as you'd think it would be. I think the optimal situation for a Switch Pro would rather be a $100 to $200 dock upgrade that would allow higher processing for games when you're playing in the TV mode. Not saying it would step it up to crazy consoles now, but it would be really cool to have a lot of power when you're playing on the TV, and then being able to play games taking a hit on handheld mode. And playing in handheld mode, it's less notable, because it's a smaller screen and resolution hits don't really matter quite as much, and also playing on a handheld console, you should expect frames to not be as good. But when you want to have that home console epic experience, simply just put it in the dock, it'll beef it up, and then you can play just like you would on your Xbox or PlayStation on the TV. That would be what I would want above all things. Of course, that's only my own speculation. I have no basis for that. Knowing Nintendo, it seems like they're probably going to want to push an entire console. But I guess the real question is, when is this coming? We recently got a Super Mario 35 themed Nintendo Switch, which is a special edition version similar to the Animal Crossing one. And it would seem kind of disrespectful for them to put out a special edition Switch, have people buy and jump in on the Switch train at that point, or maybe upgrade to that from their old base model Switch, and then immediately drop a Pro within the next few months. Because honestly, Xbox One S and X learned the hard way of announcing a console too far in advance. People will just stop buying your previous version because they'll wait for the latest version. So I think consoles typically come out just a few months to a few weeks before they're announced, when it comes to upgraded versions of them, mid-life cycle upgrades. And I don't think Nintendo wants to announce a Switch Pro coming out in December, because then they're going to see their sales for the base model just plummet. Who knows when this is coming out, honestly. I think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming at the end of this year. I really do. If not, early spring of 2022. But I can hope that it will come out this year. And I think I have to agree with a lot of other people and what they're saying. I think that the Switch Pro drops alongside Breath of the Wild 2 this holiday season. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this video. We love talking to you guys. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like these. Also, check the description for a link to our community Discord. Lastly, check our Twitter account for gameplay on the latest releases. But most importantly, always remember to stay 1UP.